Hello, my name is Tressa Coulthard, and I will be talking to you about visitor behavior at Pike Place Markets. So, one day when I was at Pike Place Market, I looked around and realized that Pike Place was much more than a place to just go and get lunch. There were so many produce stalls and dry goods stalls that I realized that I had never came to Pike Place to buy my groceries. So it left me wondering who buys their groceries at Pike Place. So I wanted to delve into see what other visitors did at the market. So my overarching question was what visitors do and their experience while at the markets. And my target audience was all visitors at Pike Place Market. As just taking off of a college student's visit, I am obviously not the only visitor that goes to Pike Place. So I wanted to see how people who are native to Seattle, as well as people from out of state and from other countries, how their visits are impacted at Pike Place Market. So the research that has been done on Pike Place Market has not been about the behavior, the experience of the said consumers and visitors, but of how sales are being driven. And so a study that was funded by Pike Place Market was looking at how to drive customers back, how to get Seattleites to be coming back more and more to buy their groceries there. And they were trying to introduce some sort of point system so they could accrue enough points to get the freebies, to get the discount. But it was only focused on the consumer side and driving sales. They weren't looking at the experience or the behavior of the visitor. So in my research, I conducted field studies, interviews, and then surveys, and I analyzed all three studies together holistically to see the key finding, to see the patterns across all three studies. The results from these three studies will impact the future design and new construction of the market as the market has to expand and grow as our society changes. So if you look across the top, you'll see our planned visits, size of group, and waiting in line at popular shops as our three key findings. And to the left, you'll see my different methods. In this table, I have marked which finding was present in which method. As you can see, planned visits and size of group were only seen in two of the research methods, while waiting in line at popular shops was seen in all three methods. Planned visit was something that came across as a contrast to my field study, as I had assumed, based on my observations, that the visitors to Pike Place were there wandering, that they weren't really there on a mission. However, as I was conducting my interviews, my participants kept saying that they were there to get lunch, that they were there to get their favorite item, but that they were not there to wander. And so in my surveys, I then followed up to see what my participants and respondents in my surveys would say. And as you can see to the right on the table, that almost everyone who responded to my survey actually planned their trip out beforehand. And this can really impact how visitors spend their time at the market. If they have already planned their visit, then they have a set plan. They're not going to wander around Pike Place. In conjunction to if they were going to wander, they'll see more of the market. Size of group is something I saw in my interviews and my field study. During my observation, I realized that many people who were visiting were in groups of 4 or more. As I was a single person out, it seemed very odd that everyone came here in such a very large group. And as I talked in my interviews, I asked them who they would visit the market with. And one of my participants quoted as saying, "I mostly go to Pike Place with my girlfriend now, but when my parents visit or when I came to Seattle with my family before I moved here, we would all go down." So it seems that when you are from a different state or if you're visiting, it's your nuclear family. But if you're from Seattle, it is more of a close friend or a single person. And so it was really interesting to hear my participants talking about the different groups they visited in during the interviews, and then to have it confirmed in their field studies that they did go and could have it confirmed in the field study that there were larger groups. This was the finding that I found across all three research methods, was waiting in line at popular shops. It showed up in my field studies, my interviews, and surveys. During my field studies, I realized that there were lines in the more popular shops, and they just didn't seem to end as I was there. During my interviews, participants talked about the lines. They talked about lines at Le Panier, Starbucks, the donut place, and they talked about how sometimes they were in the way, but they still waited in the line. They knew it was there. So in my survey, I wanted to see a comparison of the popular shops that people listed and shops with lines. And these were both open-ended questions. I didn't want to have put any of my biases on there on what shops I thought were most popular. So I let them type in what shops that they had to wait in line and what shops they thought were their favorites. And so on the table to the right, you can see a comparison between four of the most popular shops that were mentioned. And as you can tell, especially in Starbucks and Pierogi, that they always seem to have a line when people visit, but they're still a favorite shop. So it seemed that this was a visitor behavior because they wouldn't mind waiting in the line since they were going to this popular shop. So as for a design recommendation, I recommend crowd control barriers for lines. Many of the shops, especially the popular shops, have lines and they can get in the way and they are hard to navigate sometimes in Pike Place's close quarters. I also recommend a Pike Place Market mobile application specifically based off of my planned visits finding. Pike Place is a very large market with multiple stores and multiple alleyways. So having an application that allows a user to be able to go through all the different shops before visiting and marking, oh, I want to go to this one, I want to see this one, and having a map of sorts allows them to get the most out of the experience of a Pike Place. In a sense, it is almost impossible to see the whole thing and experience all the different foods in just 1 or 2 hours. I also recommend widening entrances and exits and sidewalks. Pike Place Market is, though historical and wonderful, has narrow roads and narrow walkways. And it also happens to be in the biggest tourist places in Seattle. And since during my studies I found that most people tend to go in a group of like 4 or more, these people are all together, they don't want to lose each other, so it'd be easy for them to walk through a wider entrance and exit and just stay together on a sidewalk instead of having to step to the side or go single file. So in my future research, I would love to do a field study do-over. During the timing of this, I was unable to complete a few observations during the weekend, especially during the busiest times, such as like Saturday at noon or 2-3, as I had work during these times. So I felt slightly rushed, and I would also have liked to have taken 3 1-hour-long studies instead of 3 half-hour-long studies, just to get the full experience of observing. A few of the limitations: I was only really able to use participants in my interviews who were from Seattle and Washington, and specifically my surveys. Since I was on a time constraint, I was unable to give my surveys to people at Pike Place during their visit, and so I used Facebook as a social media outlet to push my survey to all my friends and family, which happens to be most people who are from Washington, as I am from Washington. And with my interviews, my 3 participants were all either from Washington or had been in Washington for 3 years, so they had now that native feel to them instead of someone who was from another state. So even though these results are justified, I'm still unable to apply some of the results to all visitors, as I was unable to use them as my participants during my last 2 research methods. In conclusion, Interviews and surveys were the highlights of this project for me. I really enjoyed conducting both of these, and especially the surveys were really fun to write. I was very surprised with how my interview and surveys results sort of clashed with my field study results. I realized afterwards that my own internal biases of what these people were thinking and doing was affected my observations my as I was shown in contrast that this was actually was going through their mind opposed to what I was thinking was going through their mind. And in the end, after my survey, I very much enjoyed analyzing my quantitative results. Seeing the behaviors and the experiences in graphs brought a joy to me that analyzing the qualitative results from the interview was and the field study were unable to do. Well, thank you, and it was a great quarter.